Hi there, welcome to Nomadic Diaries. We're the podcast that takes you on journeys through the lives of those who have already embraced the international lifestyles. Whether you're an expat, a digital nomad, or someone who's dreaming of those lifestyles, this is your passport to a world of insight. We dive deep into the hearts and minds of the overseas lifestyle professionals, the authors, and researchers. Join us in this fun adventure as we deconstruct all the elements of expat and nomadic lifestyles, one captivating story at a time. Today we're recording from San Miguel de Allende, and in person, live and in person, we have our favorite global nomad and horse groom, Koen Gomes.
Oh, it's so good to be here back again.
It's lovely.
Yeah, especially now in person.
Yes.
It is.
It's very different, isn't it?
It is different, but it's easier, I would say. I mean, sun is shining. And,
it's beautiful.
It's beautiful, yeah, especially after all the busy holidays and
the celebrations.
And the celebrations.
Yes. We check in with Koen approximately once every 6 months. And it is just a delight to have you here in person. So in order to catch up on where you've been in the last 6 months, I'd love to know what were the highlights for you in the last 6 months. Where have you been that really hit the high spots?
Well, I think the last time we spoke was right before the Olympic Games in Paris. And that was personally one of my highlights over the year, but that was just attending the event, and Paris did a great job in organizing the Olympics, and I had the best French experience ever. But maybe that's because of the Olympics, so I don't know if that's a real French experience, but it was fantastic, that's for sure. And then in August, it was after the Olympics, it was pretty quiet. And then we moved on to the more busier months for the horse flights.
Yes.
And in September, it just started. And then October, November, it was very, very, very busy.
And where else other than Paris was one of your favorites from the last 6 months?
That must be Tokyo for sure.
So tell us more about Tokyo.
Tokyo was very interesting. Tokyo was a long flight. That's the first thing, because the Russian airspace is still closed. I've never flown. This was my first time flying horses into Japan, and I just had 2 days. But it was very nice seeing Tokyo just not in the blossom I've seen it once before, but now seeing it in sort of the autumn. And it was I had a very good time, and I've seen actually pretty much of Tokyo, and a Mexican friend of mine, she was judging at the same time as well. So we just connected just for a day in Tokyo, and we just did some sightseeing. And I was traveling with another groom, and he took me around in, I think it's Shinjuku. Which is in the north, which is the party area.
Yes.
And it was fun. And the other day I just spent around in the city, but I forgot how it was to be in Tokyo and to be around the Japanese people. It was very good. And also because these horse flights, they are popular, but at the same time, that's quite rare as well.
Yes.
They're not very...
So you flew from where to Tokyo?
From Frankfurt.
So you flew from Frankfurt to Tokyo.
Yeah.
And because Russian airspace is currently closed, because I've only flown from Tokyo to Amsterdam, or Tokyo to London, or Tokyo to Paris, maybe once. How much longer does it take to go around?
Well, the pilots told me, because there's now, if we talk about I have to talk about October 2024.
Yes.
And at that time, I mean, Israel is still ongoing. And there was something going on in Georgia as well with the demonstrations. And I don't know, but there's a lot of stuff going on right now. So that's why they closed the airspace in the Middle Eastern region, and the Russian airspace is still closed. So there was this tiny lane that was just open. I think it's above Azerbaijan and Georgia, that small part that was open. All the flights from Europe that need to go to Asia
through there.
They all have to go through there, or they have to fly around Saudi Arabia, but that takes too much
Forever.
time,
Yes.
and also a lot of fuel. So that's for the airlines very expensive. But then that was the flights to Tokyo was not even the worst thing because it took like 1.5 hour longer.
Oh, okay.
And then across Kazakhstan and China. But the way back took me like 2.5 hours longer because it went all the way over the North Pole. And it took me like 40.
Oh, yes.
So it didn't flew over Russia, but I think it flew over Canada and the US.
Yes.
So it took me.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it took 14 hours.
Eastern route.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So is that harder on the horses?
In general, I don't think so. It's more for me personally because the horses don't have a sense of time.
Do they sleep on the plane?
They do. Yeah, they do.
Do they snore? No.
Usually, they always sleep when I'm not there, so they probably snore. Yeah.
And how do you manage their food on the plane? Because when we humans get on an airplane, the airlines design the menu to be catching up with our new reality when we land back on the ground. So I remember we used to always get the best scones with cottage cream and strawberry jam on British Airways when we flew from the east to the west, because we would be landing, sometime they were pretending it was mid-afternoon for our systems, and it was mid-afternoon where we were landing. But do the horses know that?
Well, I think you're talking about the passenger meals, and I think there's a major difference between the economy and the business meals, right?
Oh, yes.
But the horses, we say they always fly business class, but they always get the same kind of food. They always get hay, and there's nothing else they get because that can solve problems, and it could give them like a colic or, so they always get hay, and they have always... they can always eat, always.
Okay.
So I always have enough food for them, which I bring enough hay, so they can eat the entire flight. Because the horses, they need to eat constantly to keep
their system
moving, and because otherwise I get in trouble as a groom. But for the horses, it's even more unpleasant because then the colic can start.
Exactly, and that you do not want to have a colic on an airplane.
No, so they always have the accessibility to eat.
Yes.
And then I check them once in the 2-3 hours, depending on how quiet they are, and then give them some water because they need to
drink as well. Mostly drink because they're getting dehydrated.
Yeah, like us as persons as well, stay hydrated in the air. Yeah.
So do you have an emergency kit or like a first aid kit for horses on board an airplane?
Yeah, always. So I'm always traveling with some medication, which I am allowed to carry with me. And in case of emergency, I can give them some medication. For example, I have a paste, which is sort of a tranquilizer if something happens, or like some harder stuff, like if if anything happens. And thank God I need to knock it off, but I've never had to use it.
Excellent.
But on the other hand, it's very difficult to... Of course, I have to do something when something happens on the flight, but at the same time, you're also, I don't know how many kilometers up in the air. So when a horse is sick, then yes, but if a horse panics or something, then the only thing you could do is just tranquilize the horse a little bit so it gets calmer.
Right. Yeah. Until you land.
And then the vet was on stage on the airport.
Excellent. And you call the vet
over.
And the vet takes over. Excellent. Well, I just wanted to ask you some of the background about the horses, because I'm sure we're all fascinated by that. Do you find that they have different cultural approaches to receiving the horses and their care in different, like when you went to Tokyo? Was it very different in their reception of the horses from, say, a place like Mexico, which is maybe more laid back?
Very good one. I think the handling of the horses and at arrival is very similar to the kind of culture they have in the country itself. So in Mexico, I never have to take the horses off myself. I give the papers to the handler, to the customs at the airport, and they handling the rest of the horses as well. So I go through immigration, and then my job is done. But in Tokyo, I had never seen that before, but they were literally loading off the horses next to the plane, straight onto the truck, And the Japanese, as they are very punctual, very organized, and that was very. That was the same thing in the handling after arrival.
And very accurate.
Very accurate.
Like the Shinkansen train when it drives into a station and the doors open exactly where the white lines are on the platform.
Indeed.
It was like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And what about Saudi Arabia? I'm very curious as to the culture in Saudi Arabia as far as their reception of horses.
I must say it was very chaotic.
Yeah.
Because I had to do it myself, but everything went well. But I was helping them, but some of these guys had no idea about the horses, and I've been traveling with them, so I already knew some of them were. Especially I was traveling with a stallion, and one stallion was pretty wild because he's been traveling with the mares as well.
Oh, wow.
So then when he got off, he was like, "Oh yeah, here we are."
Yeah.
So I had to be careful as well.
I'm sure.
So I don't get into an accident as well. But I mean, there was more chaotic because I had more horses with me, and there were less people, and there was not a real plan of
organization.
It
wasn't the structure, and they didn't necessarily. The grooms maybe didn't necessarily have the training or the background. Is that what you mean?
No, I don't think so. So that's why I mean, because like I said, I traveled with the horses, so I kind of knew how they were. But once you arrive, I mean, the horses know that as well. Like once you arrive, you're like, oh, we made it. You know, we are here.
So you think that they have a sense of relief when they hit the ground again?
Definitely, they definitely.
Do they dance around and prance around?
No, I think they're
more like calm and.
No, I think sometimes because I'm not allowed to be with the horses while landing or taking.
Sure, of course not.
Or taking off, but sometimes I can hear the sounds from the back,
from the boxes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Just so fascinating.
It's like the same when people are clapping after landing. I'm not a big fan of that, but the horses do that as well. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's terrific. One of the things that I remember about flying in Saudi Arabia was taking off on the Arabian Airlines. There's always a prayer. As you are going down the runway, they play a recording of the prayer and the call to prayer. And it's a prayer that your voyage will be safe. And I used to think, wow, every airline should do this.
I remember this when I was flying Saudi, and I was like, wait, why is that? So I asked the stewardess, and she said, yeah, we don't want to have people praying during the flight because then they're blocking the emergency. So this is why. I was like, well, that's actually pretty well thought.
Yes, it's well thought through, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, very well thought through. So in all of this year, where do you think you had to be the most flexible? Now, we know that from our previous conversations that you are nomadic, you fly thousands of miles every year, you are in the air a lot. Let's, in fact, go through this experience now, Koen. Let's tell us about 2024. How many flights did you have?
Okay, so if we go to the statistics of 2024, I had a total of 115 flights. But that includes not only the horse flights, but also just the personal flight, everything together, which is, I think, a pretty good number.
Yes.
I would say so.
Yes.
And that's across 30 countries.
30 countries.
Yeah, like an approximate,
Excellent. And tell us a little bit about how many thousand miles you think you might have gone.
That must be around 300,000 miles, which is in kilometers around 450.
Yes, far.
Yeah, and actually there's an app I use, which is pretty funny, and it also calculates how many times I could have gone around the world with that. And I think also I could go with these amount of miles. I could have gone 1.2 times to the moon, and I think
I love it.
12 times around the Earth, but I need to
check that.
Yeah, I need to check that if that's true, but certainly a couple of times around the Earth.
And what's the name of the app?
This is the app called Flighty.
Flighty, thank you. And so you have spent, it says, you said 651 hours?
Yeah.
In the air?
Yeah, a total. And also because this app is fantastic, it also calculated the amount of delays I had, and I had this year a total of 48 hours delay. And Yeah, so in total I've spent 651 hours in the air, which is about 27, which is basically a whole month
Yes,
of
entirely.
being in the air.
Oh my.
Yeah, being disconnected from the rest of the world.
Floating above us. And so that's fascinating. Can you tell our listeners, can you say the name of the app and spell it for us, please?
So this is Flighty, which is FLIGHTY. And this is an app I frequently use for tracking my own flights, even being up in the air.
Mhm.
My flight is on time, like all the information I need for my flight. It even says like, oh, you have a layover of 2 hours, which is not much at this airport because it's a big airport, but you will still make it. And it also says where I can get the luggage. And
Great.
it's just it is very handy, and
It's
it says where it's very complex, and it calculates even 1 minute when the plane, for example, left 1 minute late.
Wow.
It's very accurate, so it's very handy while traveling and having all the information
Fabulous.
just all collected.
That's great. Do you have other apps that you could recommend to us, please?
Well, for the ambitious travelers who are counting the countries they've been, there's the app that's called Bean, Been,
yes.
in which you can just tell the app like which countries you've been and when, and some countries you have on your wish list and which airports you've been. That's easier app to use, in which you get all the information from the countries as well. Get some inspiration. I think it's kind of connected to the Lonely Planet as well, so you can get some local information. And of course, I use these apps like a Skyscanner, a Booking.com, or booking my flights and hotels. And I always try to find also sometimes Google Flights or these websites, some good resources where I can buy airline tickets. I usually try to buy them through the airline themselves, but sometimes they have some very good deals.
Oh, that's good to know.
On these apps, and it's very very straightforward.
So Flighty or Bean?
Yeah, these ones are just calculating where you've been, the flights, and you can track on Flight Radar 24 also where your flight is, so you can see all the planes in the air, which is kind of fascinating as well.
Oh yes. So you see them all going through that very narrow corridor above Azerbaijan,
Indeed.
Oh. Yeah. So for listeners who are curious about nomadic lifestyles, what do you think are the major skills or qualities that someone needs to succeed? Just general, big paintbrush strokes.
In general, being flexible, like I call myself sometimes a chameleon. Don't be always on the... No, put yourself sometimes more in the background and be the cat looking out of the tree, if you know what I mean. It's just... I mean, that's a very Dutch sentence and saying like just... Observing.
Yes.
Be patient and then check what's around you, and from there just check which direction you can go to.
Well, that sounds like a very mindful approach to life in general, doesn't it?
But it comes...
observe first.
Yeah, and I think we talked about it in the last podcast as well, but it already starts with your neighbor or even within your family. I mean, everyone has someone in their family, like an uncle you're not very good with, but you still need to get along, and you still... most of the times you still need to pass through the same door.
Yes.
So you need to find a way from both sides in which you just...
to navigate it.
Could navigate it. And that's the same with, if it doesn't, like I said, it could be a neighbor, it could be your stupid uncle, or it could be maybe someone in Azerbaijan, or someone on the other side with a complete different vision, complete different background or culture. Just, adapt yourself and check your surroundings and see how far you can
go. And be the chameleon.
Yeah.
So tips for aspiring nomads. Let's ask a few more about those. So when you are on the road and you're dealing with lots of finances, like currency, do you end up with your pockets full of like 4 or 5 different currencies?
No, I mean, actually, I'm collecting money all over the world, even if I just have 1 billion.
Yes.
but I usually use my credit card,
Oh, okay.
which is very easy if I'm staying longer in a country, or in some countries here, like in Mexico.
Yes.
It's more like a cash country.
Yes.
So then I'm going to the bank, get some cash.
Yes.
And I always check the exchange rate as well.
Yes.
But in general, I always use my credit card, especially like a MasterCard or Visa.
So do you sometimes go to a country and never use their cash?
Yeah, sometimes I do.
Interesting.
But I sometimes still go to the bank to get some cash,
Yes.
just for my collection as well.
Yes.
But most of the times it doesn't really make sense just to go to the
Right.
bank and get like a $10 cash.
Of course. Of course.
In the currency.
Yeah,
of the
no,
country.
that doesn't make any
No.
sense. Well, that's fascinating. So sometimes you don't even need to handle their currency.
No. But I'm always aware of the exchange rate, so I'm not spending. I remember when I was in Kenya, and I don't have the statistics about the current exchange rate of the Kenyan currency. But I mean, I was buying a souvenir, and he asked like a price, and I said no. Let me check on my phone. I was checking it. It was like, I think it was a little. What is it like?
A souvenir.
A little souvenir, and there was €2 converted. It was about €100, and I was like, no, we're not going to do that. So I'm always very careful and also mindful about. Okay, they know I'm a tourist over there, but.
So you stay aware.
I always stay aware.
Yeah.
By not spending too much. And like, for example, here in Mexico and the US, it's very common to give tips. And I usually always give tips.
Yes.
But it's not that,
How do you keep a track of all those currencies and the finances? Do you have an app, or is it necessary to keep track of them, or?
Well, especially when you travel so much, I think it is necessary, because I mean, I don't want to be a thief of my own wallet.
Sure.
So I check it usually with the Dutch government, and they have a special app for travelers, and then you can do exchange rate. Mm-hmm. So I use this app, or on Google there are many features in which you can just have the exact exchange rates from this moment, because that just.
What are your top 3 travel hacks for staying organized? Now, I can't imagine that you have like 3 big suitcases with you.
Only when I go to Mexico.
Oh.
Because then I'm staying longer. I came here with a massive suitcase, and it was, of course, holidays. I had to bring, I don't know, I had too much overweight, but at least I could bring all my suits and 12 pairs of shoes.
12 pairs of shoes?
Yeah.
Not quite.
maybe 10, but pretty close.
Okay, I think that's great. And so normally when you're traveling with the horses, though, you don't show up with your suitcases. How many suitcases do you travel with? Is it just
usually only a backpack?
Backpack, okay.
Yeah. Travel light, which is easier, because then you have to go through the security so many times, and sometimes it's just you want to go very quick, and I mean there's not much to carry. I mean I need underwear and some
and not much else. Do you have a favorite airport?
The airports which don't have the longest queues are my favorites, but I was in Chicago late in October, and I was like, not ever again.
That's
because the US airports are very difficult, especially for transit, because you always have to go through immigration and another security. And I mean, it's easy for me to say I like Amsterdam, which I do really like, because it's very convenient. It's very. But another airport I really like are the Middle Eastern airports.
Qatar, the new one,
Dubai, Bahrain. I've been recently
Have you been to the new Singapore or Hong Kong?
Changi, but that was more an experience. Changi is just an experience. And I was in Changi. It was quite different, because I showed my boarding pass, and there was no security. I was like, wait, what's going on? It was my first time. And then security was at the gate, so every gate has its own security, which was
that's brilliant.
Well, that was different for me, but just something else.
Was it faster?
It was pretty fast.
Interesting.
I would say.
And so With this lifestyle that you are currently choosing, and we know that you're not going to do it forever. In fact, we know that this year, 2025, there will be a great big surprise, but you're not prepared to announce that surprise right now.
Not yet.
But we do know that you are going to be continuing this lifestyle for the short-term future.
I mean,
And how do you maintain a sense of community and connection?
I always stay to try and touch with the people I already have in my network, and from there I always expand. And the nomadic lifestyle I live right now is something that's very hard to give up.
Yes.
But I always try to stay in touch, and that keeps me traveling as well, because then people keep inviting me, like, oh, when you're around, please come visit me.
Nice.
And that gives you purpose as well. So I try to always stay in touch with everyone. And from these kind of people, you always met new people. Like I lived in Atlanta, where I met so many friends. I'm still in touch with them.
Excellent. And you learned a lot when you were in Atlanta, correct?
Yeah, because there were so many nationalities came together, and
really, was it very international?
Very international.
Because of the university you were at?
Yeah, because they had a big group of international students. So there were a few Europeans, of course, the Americans, but it was even someone from Pakistan, from Togo, from Australia, from Estonia, from Brazil. It's just a big mix of people.
And those melting pots are wonderful, aren't they? Because that's when our hearts open up and we remember that we're human first.
The core memories.
Yes, yeah. Excellent. And so you stay in touch with people constantly, and you build connection by going back to a few special places, or is there something else you do to build connection along the way?
I mean, San Miguel is always my top destination in just coming back, and that's why I have such a big community here.
Yeah.
And also just spending the holidays all together.
Yes.
But I always try to come back to some places, like in the US, it's Atlanta, it's California, Florida, wherever I meet people.
Sure. And you have connections already established. So when you feel like you have a little bit of a connection, it's easier to build more, isn't it?
Yeah. Then it's easier, especially. And now in the Middle East, I built a network of people. And also thanks to you,
in
Saudi and maybe on any other future destinations. And that's the same what I do with other places as well. If someone tells me, oh, I'm going to Mexico, for example, next week, or I'm going to Colombia somewhere, I'm like, oh yeah, maybe you can just reach out to this person and see if he or she can help you.
Yes. What is one piece of advice that if someone's considering a nomadic career, it's easier now because of the apps and because of our facility with using the internet to connect? And I think it's easier to build communities around the world. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Because when I was overseas for the first 20 years or so, we didn't have the internet and we didn't have apps. So we had to figure it out on the ground with your feet.
Well, I must say the accessibility is much better now with the whole. I mean, you basically have the phone.
Yes.
In which you have the whole world in your hands.
Exactly.
But my advice would be, traveling is not a race. Go to places that give you a very good feeling, that gives you comfort. And because I was sometimes in a rush to go to so many places, and I just stayed in one place for just a day, and I was like, well, this is not the travel I want to. Just to go to places you have a connection with, and don't make it like a race, and see where you can find a network, where you find people and find a culture
and build meaning.
Fitting.
Yeah, so you're building meaning along the way.
Yeah, so it's not always about like going to as many countries as you can. It's about the place, like again here in San Miguel, going to a place where you have the people who make it like a home.
Sure.
Who give you a home, give it an emotional touch.
Sure. Excellent. Well, I think that's a very, very great advice. Thank you for joining us today. Do you have a quote that you would like to end with? Because if so, For our audience, where can people find you? Where can they follow you?
They can follow me on Instagram, which I'm mostly active on with all my travel adventures, and that's just Koen Gomes on Instagram.
Okay.
And I haven't started any TikTok or all these apps yet because it's just in this fast-changing world now. I think the US is banning it as well. But primarily Instagram.
That's where we'll send people, and we will include all of this in the show notes. So what would you like to leave our listeners with today, please?
Well, connected to the advice I just gave, I would say don't compare your life to others. There's no comparison between the sun and the moon. They shine when it's their time.
That's fabulous. So, Koen, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for coming to San Miguel. Thank you for staying connected and being an ambassador for the nomadic lifestyle. We really appreciate your insights and your experience, and we look forward to catching up in 6 months.
I really hope so. Thanks so much.
This is Doreen saying masalama, hasta luego, and sayonara.